I'm Kennon Pickett, and I'm originally from Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, and I began ministry at a new church start in Benton, Texas, in North Texas, and I um, I wasn't sure about the whole church thing because uh, I had not been to church in 13 years. I had some previous kind of bad experiences, and so I didn't have a really good taste in my mouth for church. But I was in a place in my life where I really was ready to kind of explore being in a relationship with God. And so there were some commercials that the United Methodist Church put out about open hearts and doors and minds. Although that had not been my experience to that point when it came to church, I went anyway because it was in a middle school cafeteria, and I thought, it's a good place to go to church. So I went there, and I'll never forget. Someone engaged me from the minute I walked in the door. They asked if I could bring bottled waters next week for the kids, and I brought bottled waters to that church for a year just because on my first Sunday somebody asked me to. And so that kind of started things. That same guy, his wife, was standing in front of me about a year later, singing uh, praise and worship songs. And she turned around and she said, "Honey, you don't need to be down here singing with us. You need to go up there and sing with them. They need your help. And if I arranged for you to go to praise team practice, would you consider going?" And so I did. I ended up on the praise team. Then I ended up leading the praise team. Then I ended up somehow on the church staff. I couldn't have imagined receiving a calling for ordained ministry there, but that's exactly what happened. And I'll never forget sitting in the congregation the morning that I realized that Jesus was wanting me to be an ordained minister, because I was already well into my professional career. I owned my own company, was doing very well. And this meant that I would not only have to go back and get a master's degree, I would have to go all the way back and get a bachelor's degree too. And so I knew that to be called as an ordained minister in the United Methodist Church, I was about to go on an educational journey that I had not anticipated. And so for 2 weeks after Jesus called me to ordained ministry, I cried in front of my office because it was going to require a lot. And so I went on that journey. And what was interesting is uh, I met my wife just after I registered for school and began attending Oklahoma Wesleyan University. And it was kind of like when I started saying yes to God's call on my life, God started saying yes to the desires of my heart. And so I'm super grateful that I've never looked back on that with any regrets whatsoever, although it was hard, a lot of years. I went to school at Perkins School of Theology in Dallas, Texas at SMU, and I really enjoyed my time there. And then ended up after working at churches in the Central Texas Conference and the North Texas Conference, I ended up at Lovers Lane United Methodist Church, which is an urban church near downtown Dallas. And it was there that I really began to kind of grow into myself as a preacher. I led a service there that was one of the most diverse on the campus. They had 9 worship services in African languages, and the spectrum was from the most conservative to the most liberal. Like if it was there on Sunday. And so I really enjoyed that. But I'll never forget Stan Copeland. He called me out. He's the senior pastor there. He called me into the Shepherd's Garden. And it was Holy Week. I couldn't imagine what we needed to talk about in the Shepherd's Garden on Holy Week. And he told me that the Louisiana Conference was interested in having me come and join their ministry. And so my first words were, I'm not going to Louisiana. And wouldn't you know, after my wife and I prayed about it, and after a lot of discernment and talk, just a few days later, making plans to move to Louisiana. And I just think that's funny because that's, we had our own plan. We already had, we even had a contract on a property that we were hoping to do a church plant in. And all that went out the window because we felt for sure God was calling us to do ministry in Louisiana. And so we came, and I've been at Broadmoor United Methodist Church ever since. And so it's been an incredible ride as I look at ordination this week here. Um, I just look back on everything, and I'm just blown away by what God has done. I could have never dreamt of or orchestrated such such a thing. I mean, it's just really incredible. So a story that I'll never forget um, really came post COVID. COVID was such a serious time, and so many things happened during COVID. On top of just COVID, my office was burned by an arsonist. I ended up losing my father to COVID. I mean, just there were just so many things that had happened during COVID that were so serious. But there was this one moment that actually provided some real comic relief for me, and that was at the communion table in my service. My service observes communion every Sunday, and so I remember going to the communion table, and I was really excited because the second wave of COVID had finally started to kind of subside. And this was the first weekend that we were going to have people come forward to receive communion elements. So, I mean, we had all the precautions. I had gloves, I had masks, everything that you could, possibly need to make sure that there was a safe protocol in place. But I was excited. We even decided we were going to do these gluten-free wafers, which we had not done before. Jesus was always, like a Hawaiian bread for our service, but the body of Christ this time was going to be gluten-free wafers. And so I remember going up, I had done the great Thanksgiving, so I had broken a flatbread, and then we had these communion wafers on a plate. I had seen the altar servers set the altar, so I knew everything was good to go. I walk up after I've prayed over the elements, and I open the napkin only to reveal an empty plate. So there were zero wafers, and I was like, there's no body of Christ. I remember like starting to breathe heavy, like, what do I do? What do I do? And I'm like, come on, Rev, snap out of this. You got this. And then I thought, I broke flatbread. I broke a piece of flatbread. I'm going to use that flatbread. I'm Pickett, you are a genius, man. I was like, that's right. So I got the bread I broke. I saunter out there feeling like I had just saved the morning. And then I'm looking out, and there's 100 people there, and I'm looking at one flatbread tortilla going, oh my gosh. So my matrix, like Rain Man mind, is starting to divide this one piece of flatbread into 100 pieces. And I'm realizing like I'm going to be giving little pinches of this flatbread out to people, right? Because I'm looking at each half of this thing, and I'm going, oh my gosh. So I'm like praying God in my mind, God, please, I need one of your multiplication miracles right now. And so I start pinching off these little pieces as people are coming up. And about halfway through the line, I've already gone through my half tortilla, and I'm on to the second one. And I'm like, I'm going to have to get out even smaller pinches. So, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking the wildest stuff in my mind too. Oh, this is like pastor brain, right? I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, they're probably going to put a few extra dollars in the plate thinking we can't even get bread. We can't even get big pieces of bread, like a whole piece of communion bread, right? So I'm peeling off these little pieces of bread, and I am so proud of myself. I get to the end, and I still have two little pinches, one for each communion server that's holding the chalice. So I give them theirs. Now I did like do one of those pastoral things, and I kind of popped an air biscuit in my mouth. I didn't have real bread, but I washed it down like I did. Like I washed it down with my grape juice, and I'm so proud of myself. I get back to the communion table, and I set it down, and I'm like, oh, it is finished. And I'm covering the elements up as the band continues to play, and then I lift the napkin on the plate, and there is a plate full of gluten-free wafers. And I'm like, what on earth? And I'm starting, okay, Jesus, the real presence of Christ is like getting spooky for me right now. Like, what is happening here? And then I go and sit down, and I'm like, what on earth is happening? And I realized that when I opened the napkin the first time, I just lifted the napkin back. The wafers were always sitting under the napkin, right? And I'm like, Pickett, you're an idiot. So I'll have to tell you, man, that was like a million thoughts within this little tiny time frame. And I thought, oh man, I just have me a good old humbling at the communion table. So I thank the Lord for it, but it's something I will never forget. As I come to this milestone in my life, I'll tell you who I'm really thankful for, of course, is my wife and my family. They've made the greatest sacrifices. It's taken a lot of time, energy, and sweat to get to this point, but also it is a spiritual journey, and there's a lot of struggle in that. And so they've been with me through every step of the way, and I just appreciate them. The other people that come to mind is the connection at large. I can't tell you how many mentor pastors and just colleagues and laity that have pulled alongside me in ministry, and they've licked my wounds when I've not been done well, and they've cheered me on when things have gone great. And so I just feel like there are so many people, too many to give thanks to. Also, all of those who poured into me educationally from an academic standpoint. I mean, I worked and learned at the feet of some of the very best professors and the United Methodist academic world. And I'm grateful. People like Jamie Clark Souls and Roy Heller and Evelyn Parker. I just am so grateful to have sat under the teachings of these amazing Methodists and Baptists and other denominations. I mean, they really have helped formed me in a way that I believe gives me a mind of diversity and a mind that celebrates all of God's children. And so, but most of all, of course, I thank God because it is from God whom all blessings flow. And so something that I could have never imagined for myself, God saw. And so I think maybe the only small part I played was just some willingness. So I'm grateful for this time. I definitely want to thank the Louisiana conference too, a conference that they thought outside of the box, and they actually extended an invitation. And what I found when I got here was one of the most hospitable cultures of people I could have ever imagined. I thought Texas had that in spades. I'm gonna tell you, Louisiana, the Southern hospitality that I found here, my family found here. My wife and our parents are no longer with us, and so the church is our family. And so I just can't imagine any other family to be a part of than right here in Louisiana.